Welcome to Wawas on Wire. Today, we're talking about Awang Hashim's critique on parliamentary checks and balances. And it really was quite something, wasn't it? The specific moment, very charged, during the committee stage for the 2026 fiscal budget.
That's right.
You had Pendang Member of Parliament, Awang Hashim from Parti Islam Si Malaysia, using that debate to make a really provocative statement, basically questioning how the government handles dissent.
Yeah, suggesting a breakdown almost in how our democracy is supposed to function.
And what's really striking as you dig into it is that the spark wasn't, the actual ringgit amounts in the budget.
Not at all. The real flashpoint was how the executive, the government, was dealing with questions about a major foreign policy issue.
The Reciprocal Trade Agreement signed between Malaysia and the United States.
Exactly. And this whole clash, it really puts a spotlight on that ongoing tension, doesn't it? Between the government and the opposition about accountability, about how far parliamentary oversight should go.
It definitely felt like more than just political point scoring over spending. It felt like it touched on fundamental questions about our whole system. The drama really came from Awang Hashim feeling like the opposition was being, scolded.
Looked down, essentially.
Shut down for just trying to do their job, scrutinizing this big international deal.
And he wasn't subtle about expressing that frustration, was he?
Not at all. He went for probably the most loaded comparison you could make in Malaysian politics.
The C word.
He basically argued, look, if the opposition gets scolded every time, if they're denied the right to ask real questions,
Then what's the point?
then in his words, the country should just turn into a communist system. And he specifically asked cabinet members, pleaded almost, not to be emotional and just to answer properly.
That phrase, suggesting we change the whole system, it's obviously meant to grab headlines. But it does underline his warning about the institution itself.
It does.
And the context he provided is key here. He stressed this wasn't just an off-the-cuff remark.
Right. He mentioned preparation.
He specifically told the House that the opposition had gone out and sought advice from experts, from scholars, before they even brought these questions up in Parliament.
And that changes the dynamic, doesn't it? It frames their questions not as just, trying to cause trouble.
Exactly. Not frivolous potshots.
But as substantive, researched inquiries. He was essentially making a stand on a core principle.
Yeah.
That Malaysia, because it's a parliamentary democracy, needs that opposition oversight. It's part of the design.
It's fundamental. That's the opposition's job, isn't it? To be that check, to make the government explain itself in public. And if it looks like that mechanism is being blocked, especially on something as significant as a long-term trade deal, well, that calls the whole process into question. They're fighting for their role.
Okay, I see the point about the institutional role, but let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah.
Using the word communist just to make a point about procedure.
It's strong language.
Does that kind of hyperbole risk undermining the serious point about oversight? Does it make it easier for the government to dismiss the actual critique?
That's always the risk, isn't it? That's the friction you get in Parliament. His comment was, without a doubt, designed for maximum political impact.
Sure.
But the function he's defending, the right to question, the need for scrutiny that remains absolutely legitimate, he's pushing back against the idea that the government can just sort of manage things by saying, we've answered that. He's saying Parliament, especially the opposition, must be allowed to probe, even if it seems repetitive to those in power.
Okay, so that was the big explosion. What actually lit the fuse? What happened before Awang Hashim made that statement?
Well, the groundwork was laid earlier in the same debate, and it involved the same topic.
Oh.
Another Parti Islam Si Malaysia MP, Ahmad Fadli from Pasir Mas, had raised concerns. He suggested the U.S.-Malaysia Reciprocal Trade Agreement might actually pose risks to Malaysia's national sovereignty.
Okay, raising sovereignty concerns about a trade deal, that's a pretty serious point to make in Parliament.
Yeah.
How did the government side react to that?
Well, the reaction was reportedly quite sharp. Ahmad Fadli was apparently reprimanded by the digital minister, Govt, for voicing that specific concern.
Right. And I guess I have to ask you, and maybe ask our listeners to think about this too. When an MP raises a potentially serious, maybe even research-backed concern about national sovereignty, should the response from the government be a telling off? Or should it be, a detailed answer that tackles the concern seriously?
It certainly seems the opposition interpreted that reprimand as an attempt to shut down the debate, not just to clarify the
That
policy.
seems to be their perspective, yes.
Exactly. They felt their role, their constitutional duty as checks and balances, was being actively squashed when they tried to look closely at international agreements that could affect the country for years to come.
These treaties are complicated things.
They absolutely are, especially with a major power like the U.S. They need careful, ongoing scrutiny. So that perceived scolding sent a message, perhaps unintentionally, that the government wasn't willing to fully engage with the substance of their worries.
So you have this fundamental conflict. The executive saying, we've given you the info, maybe holding the detailed briefing papers,
We've explained it once.
and the legislature saying, hold on, something this complex touching on sovereignty needs more discussion, maybe across multiple sessions. It's a clash over what accountability really means in practice.
That nails it. Is it efficiency or is it thoroughness? The government might argue for efficiency. Let's move on. The opposition is arguing for that democratic redundancy, that double-checking.
Which brings us to the government's official response during that debate.
Yes, because they didn't just let the communist comment hang there was an immediate pushback.
From whom?
It came from Sim Sitsin, the Bayan Baru MP from Parti Keadilan Rakyat. He flatly rejected the label and the whole idea that procedure was breaking down.
And his argument was,
His point was that the government had already provided extensive explanations about the Reciprocal Trade Agreement.
you backed that up too, right? Mentioning previous explanations.
Yes, he specifically pointed out that both the Trade and Industry Minister, Tengku Zafrul, and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim himself had addressed the RTA in the Dewan Rakyat before.
So the government's line was essentially, we've covered this thoroughly. Why are you still asking these fundamental questions as if you haven't heard the answers?
That's the crux of it. The government feels the issue is settled. The opposition feels the answer wasn't good enough, or maybe new aspects have come up that need questioning. And it's interesting, Awang Hashim did seem to sense how potent his language was. He offered a clarification later.
What did he say?
He insisted he was not accusing anyone personally of being communist. He framed it more as using a hypothetical scenario to underline just how vital it is that the system allows opposition questions fully and respectfully.
So less of an accusation, more of a procedural stress test. Like, if we reach a point where we absolutely cannot ask hard questions, then the system's broken and we might as well change it.
Exactly. It's a dramatic rhetorical device to make a point about the rules of engagement in Parliament.
Okay.
And if you look at the bigger picture here, this whole argument really boils down to the quality of communication, doesn't it? And maybe the frequency, too.
Between the executive and the legislative branches.
Yes, particularly when dealing with complex international agreements. And, crucially, the tone of that communication. Was the government's earlier explanation truly sufficient? Or did the RTA's complexity justify more questions until the opposition felt the sovereignty risks were fully addressed?
That tension seems constant.
It defines the health of Parliament, really, that ongoing negotiation.
So, recapping, it was quite a dramatic moment. A senior opposition figure suggesting a fundamental shift in the system because he felt his side was being silenced on a major issue, national sovereignty, international trade. It's a powerful reminder that democracy isn't just a set of fixed rules. It's constantly being shaped in these debates, often about procedure and respect as much as about policy details.
Absolutely. And that constant negotiation is vital, which leads to maybe a final thought for listeners to consider.
Okay.
Thinking practically about how parliamentary democracy works here in Malaysia, you've got the government needing to handle these really complicated global policies, like the RTA, which are full of dense trade law and nuance. How can they possibly balance giving enough detailed information,
Which the opposition demands.
while also managing the political back and forth, the dissent, and making sure the opposition genuinely feels their constitutional role isn't just being put up with, but is actually respected in every single debate?
That balance, finding that balance seems incredibly difficult, but also essential.
It really does. And getting it right or wrong determines the health of our democratic institutions going forward.
A really critical point to reflect on. Thanks for walking us through that very complex situation. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.